Well, hello everyone and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys are enjoying the book. I'm enjoying reading it for you. And to give you a hint, if you haven't seen me or heard me before, I haven't read this book, so it's kind of unfolding for me as it's unfolding for you. Uh, this is a lot of commentary in the reading, so let's get started. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. Panic and pressure built simultaneously as the water closed over my head. My gown tangled around my leg, a restrictive weight, dragging me to the bottom even as I tried to stay calm. The water was only a few feet deep. I just needed to get my bearings. The prince fisted the fabric of my gown to pull me back up, but when his hold shifted and his fingers dug deep into my forearms, my relief gave way to the realization he was holding me under. I struggled to shake him off, using the bottom for leverage. Lungs on fire, I choked in a mouthful of water. Then suddenly, my head breached the surface and my next breath was all air. He dragged me over to the fountain ledge to land like a wet bundle in the grass, where I coughed, gulped in air. Leaning me over, the prince tugged soaked strands of hair out of my face. Tessa, my God, are you all right? You startled me, and I thought. His voice faded. I don't know what I thought. I just reacted. You fought me when I tried to pull you up. I shivered as the night air pressed against my wet skin, the shudder wrecking my entire body. It had happened so fast. Was he trying to help? A watery cough was finally followed by a clean breath air, and I lifted my head to see the worry in his wide, frantic eyes. I must have been confused, susceptible to the vision I had of Ella's final moments. I'm okay. No, you're not. He scrubbed a hand over his face. After what's happened here with Ella, his throat worked and he cursed. My gaze dropped to his left arm. The sleeve rolled up past his elbow. What were you doing out there here? I saw you searching for something in the water. Prince Marcus exhaled, and his eyes closed. I was leaning over the fountain, my reflection staring back at me, and then Ella's face was there beneath the water. The way she looked after they found her body. It spooked me, and I knocked my wine glass into the water. I should have left it, but I was trying to fish it out when you approached. He winced, the moonlight highlighting the movement of his jaw. What happened to Ella was my fault. I should have been there. I was supposed to be. His voice cracked. What do you mean? Shortly before midnight, I switched costumes with the servant. I never danced with her. It's all a lie. My alibi, all of it. He slumped in the grass, defeat etched across his face. I never wanted any of this. The ball was my father's idea. He's demanding I marry, and said if I don't find someone on my own, he'll pick someone for me. Do you know what that's like? To have no control over your life? Water dripped from the ends of my hair, skating down my arms. I do know. Yeah, well, I've had enough of of his ultimatums. Where did you go? Back to my rooms. No one saw me, if that's your next question. They found her floating in the water not long after I'd returned to the ballroom. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. I feel guilty for not being there. The guilty guilty because her death gave me more time. There's no more talk of marriage. He gave a dry laugh. Some would say that's a motive, don't you think, Miss Daniels? I didn't answer. His confession seemed genuine and matched Liam's story, but it didn't mean he was entirely true. It was entirely true. What steps wouldn't we take to regain control over our lives? I'd borrowed money from a gang. It wasn't a stretch to think a prince could commit murder. You're dripping wet, Prince Marcus scowled and climbed to his feet. Reaching out a hand, he pulled me up. The action shifted the cuff of his rolled sleeve, and I noticed a raised injury on his bicep. Did you hurt yourself? My mind flashed to Ella's struggle with the killer. Had she injured him while being held under the water? He he absently touched his arms. He absently touched his arms, confusion flickering. Let me start that over. He absently touched his arms, confusion flickering over his features before he laughed. No, he lifted his sleeve higher. It's a Vitalis mark. Your mother gave it to me. My mother? I thought you said you'd never met her. Prince Marcus shrugged. I was a baby at the time. I don't think that counts as a meeting. I stepped closer, wanting a better look at the spot where my mother had cast her spell. It was a strange feeling to see the evidence of her magic had left behind. I didn't think royals still practiced the tradition of Vitalis marks. They stopped ages ago. Because they're barbaric. But try telling that to my father. He's superstitious. The mark is supposed to be a mystical blessing granted to royal sons. But no offense to your mother, it doesn't seem to be working. He pulled his sleeve back down, hiding the scar from view. I shivered again, and Prince Marcus frowned. You need a change of clothes. Is that what you're wearing? No, it definitely wasn't. The spell I'd cast had faded, leaving me in my gray tunic dress. My emerald silk gown and matching slippers had vanished, a small pang throbbing around my heart, bringing home how temporary magic truly was. It was why seeing the mark on the prince's arm affected me so much. He had something of my mother's that wouldn't fade. It couldn't be sold off like her books or the magic shop. Let's get you inside before you freeze to death. We'll go in through the side entrance so no one sees. He slipped an arm around my shoulders and led me back to the castle. We'd only made it a short distance when Derek found us. I watched him pick up the pace, my whole body trembling with cold. Concern pinched its features as his gaze slid over my soaked dress. What happened? He shouted, shrugging out of his jacket. Derek reached for me, pulling me gently from Prince Marcus's hold, and slipped the jacket over my shoulder. I felt instantly warmer. I would too. She fell. She fell into the water. It was my fault. It was an accident, I interrupted as Derek's hands roamed my body, searching for an injury. Were you hurt? He asked. No, just embarrassed and soaked. I'm fine. I captured his hands between my own. I'm fine, I repeated, my voice barely more than a whisper. I'm taking you home. What? No. Flattening my lip, I made a subtle motion with my eyes towards the prince, signaling that we had more to investigate. Derek ignored me completely, giving his hands a firm shake. We're done for tonight. Your Highness, please excuse us. He didn't wait for a response, slipping his arm around my waist and urging me towards the waiting carriages. I ground my heels into the gravel. Slow down. Not until we're in the carriage. Pick up your feet, or I'll carry you. You're being ridiculous. It was an accident. We should, I yelped when Derek bent and swept me off the ground. He kept walking, my dress leaving a trail of droplets in the grass. Aren't you curious about what I learned? I mean, Tessa, not now. You're freezing. You could have been seriously hurt. What if you'd hit your head on the stone? What if he tightened his hold around my shivering body? Ella drowned in that water. You could have died too. Shame kept me silent. He was right. A life had been lost. It wasn't trivial. Derek gave a driver directions to the magic shop and ducked into the carriage, where he placed me on a plush seat and rummaged beneath the footsteps for a blanket, draping it across my lap to keep away the chill. He settled in too and pulled me against his side. Come here. No, I wriggled away. taking off his coat. It was horribly damaged. I've already ruined your jacket. Can't I? I can't. I don't give a damn about my clothes. They're replaceable. His word made me pause, the significance wearing with my emotions. Did that make me irreplaceable? His tone gave me hope, but that was wishful thinking. Oh my God, I wish I thought like this. This is me commentating. I wish I thought like this. I just don't. No, he didn't mean specifically. Sorry, I'm going back to reading now. No, he didn't mean specifically. His declaration was a natural response to his oath as a detective. Life was precious, even the life of a laughable witch. Still, I dropped the coat at my feet and sank into his embrace, pretending he truly meant me. Can you do a spell? Removing my numb fingers from beneath the blanket, I tried to rub my palms together. Nothing. It was too drained and cold to channel any magic. No, I'll have to get dry the old-fashioned way. He smoothed the damp hair away from my face. Tell me what happened. I went outside for fresh air and found myself retracing Ella's footsteps. I ended up at the fountain, and that's where I saw Prince Marcus. He had his arm in the water searching for something, which I found out was just a wine glass. I startled him and he knocked me off my feet. He probably thought I was the killer, back for another round. I was only underwater for a few seconds before he pulled me out. I'm mortified more than anything, especially since I panicked in 4 feet of water and actually thought he was trying to hold me under. How so? When I tried to get my footing, my gown weighed me down. I thought his hands were on me, pushing. I I was scared and fought back, but then he dragged me out. I'm not certain what happened. I should have been there. While you were outside nearly drowning, I was fielding useless questions. His voice was deep and self-loathing. I didn't almost drown. I placed a hand against his chest. Besides, I was able to get Prince Marcus to confirm Liam's story about switching the mask. He was furious with his father for arranging a ball and for forcing him into a marriage he didn't want. That means his alibi is non-existent. True. As far as we know, no one can account for his whereabouts at the time of the murder. He claims he never met Ella. I don't know whether to believe him or not. It's a good thing I fell in the water. It made him open up. Leave it to the witch to break the ice. Or, in this case, the surface of the water. I laughed softly, hoping to lighten the mood. It had the opposite effect. The laughter died on my lips as Derek's hand cupped my jaw. His thumb brushed the side of my cheek, and I swallowed. Nerves tingling, caught in the silent moment. I won't let anything happen to you. I'll keep you safe. I swear it. His promise made my heart pound. The carriage lantern illuminated his stark features. I struggled to find the words to answer him. Girl, don't answer. Just leave it alone. Just enjoy the moment. Nothing will happen to me, and even if something did, it wouldn't be your fault. I hate what Olivia said to you. You're not responsible for Ella's death because you didn't solve the other murders. I haven't known you for long, but I know you care about your cases and the people in this kingdom. I admire that. I wet my lips as a flush warmed my cheek. I admire you more and more every day. A string of emotion played across his face, his expression moving from denial to desire in a heartbeat. He pulled me closer to murmur my name, the rough sound quickening my pulse. When his lips found mine, soft and achingly slow, his tongue against the seam of my mouth teased and moaned low in my throat. Derek reacted to the sound like I'd struck him with magic, deepening the kiss. My heart drummed faster. Need burned a path through my body. I moved against him, running my hands over the wall of his muscled chest. This was crazy. We were supposed to be acting, and yet none of this felt like an act. Not the longing that coiled low in my belly, or the raw urgency he poured into our kiss. We broke apart, breathing heavily. Tessa, his voice shook as lust darkened his gaze. More. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry that I laugh. It's the Sagittarius side of me. I don't know what to tell you. More, I breathed. Please, more, almost warm. He growled, capturing my chin between his fingers and fusing our mouths together. His hand fisted my wet hair, slid down my damp skin, and air caught my lungs as his knuckles brushed the underside of my breast. Oh, okay. They skimmed lower until his fingers locked around my hip and dragged me into his lap. With my palms flat against the back of his carriage seat, my head fell on my shoulders at the warmth of his mouth on my collarbone. Derek tasted my skin, stroking the column of my neck and banishing the cold and any lingering fear. When his lips found mine again, he cradled my face in his hands. Slowly, he pulled back with a reluctant groan to rest his forehead against mine. You admire me, huh? Don't let it go to your head, detective. The carriage rumbled over ruts in the road, swaying us closer together. Derek wrapped his arms around my waist. I was warm all over, shivery, but not from the cold. As his earlier words washed through me, I'll keep you safe. That kind of vow was addictive to a witch who courted disaster as much as I did. Yeah, no shit. Oops, sorry. It shook something loose inside me, something I hadn't ever dared hope for. Looks like we saved the best of our act for when no one was watching. Mr. Lincoln will be so disappointed. His mouth brushed over mine again, then trailed slowly along my jaw. Who's acting? I've wanted to kiss you again for days. Oh, okay. You have? My breath hitched at the delicious tracks his fingers made over my skin. Yes, every time you force my hand and get your way, you're relentless. That doesn't sound like a compliment, detective. Hmm, it doesn't, does it? How about stubborn, headstrong, unshakable? You're not getting any warmer. Sounds like you're out of practice. Maybe I am, he smiled, and I melted beneath it until a worry surfaced. Aren't you afraid this might be one of my spells? That you'll wake up tomorrow and wonder what hit you. Derek paused and met my eyes. You forget. I investigated you. You aren't that good at magic. True. My laughter filled the carriage. My secrets are exposed. Something tells me Something tells me I'm only scratching the surface of your secrets. I wanted to tell him everything right then. He might understand and maybe we could work together to handle Argus. But when I opened my mouth to try, he captured it in another lingering kiss. Well, I mean, if he did that, then you just can't, can you? As much as I wanted honesty, I couldn't do it. Some truths were bigger than attraction, bigger than whatever was building between us. The moment passed, and pretty soon the carriage was rolling to a stop in front of the magic shop. Derek walked me to the door, checking again to make sure I hadn't hit my head or suffered some other injury. It felt nice to be cared for. Yeah, it does feel nice to be cared for. The luxury always got pushed aside in favor of survival. For the first time in a long time, my struggles didn't feel so overwhelming, and a tiny pinprick of hope blossomed. Oh, well, that's good. I listened to the carriage pull away while breathing in the earthy scent of the magic shop. There was a chill in the room. I half expected to find Ella hovering in the shadows, but she wasn't there, and I was surprised by the wave of disappointment. I'd become used to her appearing out of thin air and found myself wishing I had someone to talk to. Yeah, that happens. The clock, I'm sorry. I was just thinking in my head, sorry. I was thinking, yeah, when you don't want people around, they're around, and then when you want somebody to talk to, all of a sudden there's nobody there. That's what I was thinking in my head. Okay, back to the story. The clock inched closer to midnight. After lighting the lamp, I headed upstairs to change out of my damp clothes. Finally dry, I heard the midnight chimes and returned to the shop. Pausing on the bottom step, there she was, a silver glow near the back door. You're here. I have so much to tell you. I think we're getting closer. She stood motionless, then lifted a translucent arm towards the door that led to the backyard. It was slightly ajar. Was it open when I arrived home? Was that why it was so cold? Someone was here. They left something on your step. I peered out into the dark and found a box wrapped in red ribbon. Someone had entered my backyard and left the gift while I was away. I felt like It felt like a violation rather than an act of kindness. Bending to lift it, I shook the box. It wasn't heavy, but something shifted inside. Sensing unseen eyes on me, I hurried back and slammed the door shut. Ella didn't take her gaze off the box. What's in it? With shaking fingers, I united the ribbon and removed. I'm sorry. With shaking fingers, I untied the ribbon and removed the lid. It landed with a thud on the floor. A glass slipper rested on a wad of tissue paper. There was a note tucked beneath the heel, which I unfolded and held up to the light for Ella to read aloud over my shoulder. Her voice trembled, catching on the last word. If the slipper fits, you're next. Ooh. Okay, chapter 19. This was on my doorstep last night. Vivian, this was on my doorstep. Sorry, let me try that again. Chapter 19. This was on my doorstep last night. Vivian peered into the box and read the note. She scrunched her nose in distaste. If the slipper fits, the killer's taunting you? I removed the shoe from the box, running my finger over the smooth glass, like a crystal spike. The faceted heels glinted in the light. The warning was clear. I know who you are. I know where you live. And if you continue to haunt me, you'll be next. I told you this case was too dangerous. What are you going to do? Vivian placed the note on the table. The shoe is evidence. I can't hide it. I have to show it to Derek. I winced, remembering his reaction to finding me after my accident at the fountain. He won't be happy. Vivian chuckled and leaned back in her chair. That's an understatement. You should tell him everything. He needs to know Argus is blackmailing you. A knot formed in my stomach. Viv, you know I can't do that. He'll think I'm working for the enemy. Aren't you? No, I have zero intention of helping Argus. I just think that if I can figure out why he wants information on Iron Hazel, it might reveal a clue about Ella's case. Girl, just tell him. She's gonna make it worse for herself. Okay, sorry, back to the story. That's fine. But do you have to go behind Derek's back to do it? When will you learn that you can't do everything on your own? You have to let other people help you. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, herein lies the problem, is what I'm saying. This is my commentary. Don't we mostly feel like we need to do it ourselves and have a problem asking others to help? If you're in this group, it's probably true for you. Again, this is just what's going on in my head. Okay, here we go. I do let people help. You do not. Case in point, rather than coming to me about your shop, you borrowed money from Argus. I couldn't meet her gaze. I handled it. No, Tess, you didn't handle it. You turned one problem into many. You're basically a magician of catastrophe. Well, that's kind of true. She sighed. Look, It's okay if people see you struggle. No one expects you to be perfect. And what happened with your mother wasn't fair. Stop, Viv. I don't want to talk about it. You need to talk about it eventually. It's been 7 years and you still see yourself through her eyes. When are you going to quit punishing yourself? She never should have placed such an unreasonable demand on you. I said stop. Vivian didn't understand. She'd never failed at anything. She'd never had to live within the confines of disappointment. If Derek learned the truth, he'd see how desperate I'd become. The depths of my failure would be on full display. I was already in I was already a laughingstock amongst my mother's past clients, and I couldn't stand to be one in his eyes too. The entire kingdom could joke behind my back, so long as he wasn't in the punchline. He wasn't in on the punchline. To make matters worse, I'd already crossed the line by keeping my association with Argus a secret. My quest for reward, no matter how much I needed it, was enough to taint my motivations. Vivian placed a hand over mine. All I ask is that you think about it. Give Derek the benefit of the doubt. He might surprise you. Her words stayed with me as I walked towards the agency. Some of my resolve had crumbled, but I wasn't ready to reveal everything. Not until I was sure I could handle the repercussions. I stood outside Derek's office, gathering the courage to knock. Part of me was nervous to show him the box with the slipper. The other part couldn't stop replaying our kiss in the carriage. Guess which part won? I smiled as I remembered the feel of his mouth, hot and insistent against mine, and the way his fingers threaded through my hair, molding my body against his. A perfect fit. Everything had faded away, all the secrets and lies, the case. Nothing else had mattered for a brief moment. The door opened while my hand was still hovering in the air. Derek halted in front of me, a stack of folders tucked under his arms. Hi! I cringed at my lame greeting. Couldn't I think of anything better to say? Good morning, Tessa. Are you headed out? Wow, that was a scintillating conversation. He glanced at the folders and nodded. I have a meeting with the director to go over the events of last night. The corner of his mouth lifted. Well, not all the events of last night. I smiled, and some of my nerves slipped away. Don't tell me the Honorable Detective Chambers is keeping secrets from his superiors. I've corrupted you. He pulled me into his office and shut the door. I backed up against it. Corruption is a strong word, he murmured, cupping a hand around my cheek, warm and solid. I was desperate to lean into it. It's more like I'm trying out your investigative methods. Well, I've been called an asset before, but it's nice to see you finally realizing it. Derek's thumb traced the bottom of my lip. I wouldn't go that far, but the heat in his eyes said otherwise. What do you have behind your back? You're hiding something. With a heavy sigh, I showed him the box containing the slipper. Derek clenched his jaw in silence while he read the note. I placed my hand on his chest to feel the vibration of anger beneath my palm. Before you say anything, the killer knows where you live. He's watching you. It wouldn't be hard to find out. It's not like there's an abundance of witches in the kingdom. It wouldn't be hard to find out. It's not like there's an abundance of witches in the kingdom, especially not involved in investigations and romantically linked to the lead detective. Derek scrubbed a hand over his face, concern darkening his features. We should have kept your association a secret. We shouldn't have flaunted it. I don't agree. I think this means we're getting closer, striking a nerve. The killer wouldn't lash out like this otherwise. Why risk it? Because the killer thinks they're in control. They can manipulate the investigation by issuing threats. If you're right, and we're getting closer, a threat like this might make us sloppy. But we won't be. I searched his gaze. No, we won't. But I don't want you to stay alone at the magic shop anymore. I didn't relish staying alone either. I might be downplaying the slipper for his benefit, but the gift had me worried, and the shop no longer felt safe. Besides, it wasn't like I had any real customers. After the article in the paper, everyone only wanted a glimpse of the witch who'd enchanted the kingdom's lead detective. That wouldn't have bothered me if it also meant they'd part with their money, but so far it hadn't worked out that way. I can stay with Vivian in town. It's closer to the agency. That will work. I'm in a meeting all day, but Abrams should be available soon. He can take you back to the shop to get your things. Let him escort you to Vivian's this evening. Derek gave me ad, an adamant look. His rules echoed in my head. No wandering off alone. Fine. I can sort through evidence while I wait. A fresh pair of eyes might help. I just need the key. I held out my hand, not missing the shock in Derek's face. What? You mean you aren't going to break in? Not this time, detective. This time I'm asking. He lifted a brow in surprise. Maybe I'm the one corrupting you. I patted his chest with a wink. I wouldn't go that far. After opening the evidence room, I was left alone to sift through the victim's personal items. I started with the folders detailing the circumstances of each murder. There wasn't anything there that Derek hadn't already mentioned, and I found my attention wandering to the board where he'd tacked up the roses, one for each of the girls. Why did the killer leave roses? There had to be some significance. I shuffled through the papers to find a list of possible strains. The roses left at the scene were distinctive and unlike the ones found at the palace. Derek hadn't been able to determine the origin. Could they have been imported? The first killing took place 3 years ago, which meant searching ships' manifests for imported seedlings would be useful, or useless, sorry. Unfortunately, they hadn't paid attention to the rose at the first crime scene, and the passage of time made everything more difficult. Putting the list of roses aside for now, I reached for one of the journals, pausing when I caught sight of a familiar object. The notebook Derek carried around with him poked out from beneath a stack of papers. An image of him making mysterious entries, the day we met, flashed through my mind. Inside were his first impressions of me and my shop. Impressions that probably weren't kind. With a glance over my shoulder to make sure I was alone, curiosity made me pick it up. Girl, don't pick it up. You're already getting yourself into trouble. She cannot stay out of trouble. But guilt kept me from opening it. It was one thing to read the thoughts of a dead person, but it was another to pry into the thoughts of the living. In the end, curiosity topped guilt. I flipped open the book, searching for the date Derek first visited my shop. I found it towards the middle and scanned through. As I feared, his thick scowl covered the page in judgment. He described my shop as untidy and hazardous, making special note of the smelling potions I'd offered him as at a discount. I flattened my lip, reading further. Miss Daniels displays a lack of respect for authority and is secretive when asked direct questions. Okay, not wrong, but also not flattering. I skipped to the next entry, drumming my finger on the desk in irritation. Miss Daniels is evasive and crumbles easily when cornered, sorry. She's unlikely to be a suspect in the Lockwood murder, though she does appear to have information regarding the victim's mental state before her death. Not wanting to find my illegal potions meant I crumbled easily, more like self-preservation. I huffed and flipped the page. After meeting with the subject's neighbor, it appears Miss Daniels relies on her magic to support herself, though, according to the neighbors, Miss Daniels' magic is subpar. God, I know that's hard to read for her. I snapped the book closed and considered taking the candle flame to its pages. Subpar? Sylvia could forget about the friends and family discount I gave her on the Regal Cream. Humiliation made my neck hot. How dare he? Then again, I called him Detective Arrogant and considered turning him into a toad. I scratched the back of my neck. Hadn't I also referred to him as cold and calculating? It didn't matter that I hadn't written it down. I meant it at the time. I opened the book again, flipping past the negative entries to the one he'd made when he found me in the alley. This one was different. Miss Daniels is resourceful in the face of danger and exhibits street smarts. And then one final entry dated after we interviewed the Lockwoods. Tessa is perceptive and catches on to things quickly. Her questions during interviews are clever and intuitive. She may turn out to be a valuable asset to the Lockwood investigation. An asset? Something that felt a lot like pride burned in my chest. There was nothing in the last entry about my failed magic, and it felt good to be judged for skill other than the ones I'd been born with. Derek had misjudged me in the same way I'd misjudged him. We had both fallen victim to poor first impressions. He's a workaholic, isn't he? I jumped, dropped Derek's notebook. Estelle stood over my shoulder, her gray eyes probing, casting a look between the notebook and the pile of information scattered across my desk. Sorry to startle you, dear. I wanted to bring you a cup of tea and let you know Abrams is available to take you to your shop whenever you're ready. I accepted the cup and breathed in the sweet aroma. Mmm, steam wafted over the rim. Has he always been like this? I gestured to the cluttered piles. On the outside, he doesn't give much way. Estelle clucked her tongue and leaned against the desk. This case is different. It's personal. It's the one case he hasn't been able to solve. It eats away at him. Personal? How do you mean? She shrugged. It's not my story to tell, but I will say that ever since you came along, I've seen a lightness in him that wasn't there before. I even caught him whistling this morning, if you can believe that. You're good for him and good for the case. I laughed, the sound more scornful than I intended. I haven't been very good at anything in my life. Estelle angled her head, considering my statement. Well, maybe you haven't found the thing that you're good at yet. That's the fortunate thing about life. You can always try something new. Do you hear that, ladies? You can always try something new. Just because you aren't good at one thing doesn't mean you'll be bad at another. Not if you find what you're meant to do. She gave me a sly smile and leaned closer. I like her. Or the person you're meant to do it with. I do like her. What if she was right? I was caught in a vicious circle, repeating the mistakes and doing the things the way I'd always done them. It wasn't until I'd stepped out of my comfort zone that I finally felt useful. That's how it works. Are you guys listening? This is how it works. If you're not good at something, try something else. Thanks, Estelle. Okay, back to this. Thanks, Estelle. You can tell Abrams I'm ready to go. Something tells me after last night I'm going to be on research duty for a while. I'll have time to go through everything here. Estelle's eyes went wide with sympathy at the mountains of paper. Better you than me, dear. Abrams unloaded my bags from the carriage while Vivian stood in the doorway, her hands balled on her hip, counting each bag. How long are you planning to stay? The duration of the case, I assume. Be careful with that one, Abrams. I gestured to the oversized bag clinking loudly as he set it down. Vivian cocked her head. Is that what I think it is? Of course. Did you think I wouldn't bring it? Will we need that much? It's better to have more than you need. Don't you agree? Naturally. Abrams furrowed his brow. His head bounced back and forth as he tried to follow our conversation. He hefted the bag over his shoulder. What's so important about this one? Is it full of dead potions or deadly potions? I picked up the last of my bags and followed him inside. No, that's the wine. He bursted out laughing and shook his head. I hope there's some in here for me. It's been a long week. Vivian grinned. There's more than enough. I'll get us all a glass, and we can make an evening of it. I've been dying to try out the new tarot deck from my grandmother sent me. Oh, how cute. Don't you just love that? This is my commentary. Don't you just love that? Like when you're just kind of girl chatting or chatting with some friends and then somebody busts out some tarot. It's like, let's just do some tarot. I love that. She showed Abrams where to store the bags, then disappeared into the kitchen. The sound of cork popping could be heard from the seance room, where Abrams and I sat around the oval table. He peered wearily over his shoulder. Is it true that Miss James can see ghosts? Yes, all of her life. They can't hurt you, though. You're fine. He didn't seem convinced. A knock sounded on the door. I rose to answer it, but Abrams held up a hand. Let me. It's late. And with last night's threat, you shouldn't answer it. He pushed through the hanging beads to enter the waiting room. The door opened and I strained to hear the muffled conversation. Where is she? Recognizing Derek's voice, I turned as he entered the room. Abrams remained behind him. It seemed the poor guy wouldn't be getting the glass of wine after all. He was probably stationed on the stoop, standing guard. I'd have to sneak him a glass later. My eyes locked with Derek's, and warmth spread through my chest. He looked exhausted, his clothes rumpled after a long day at the agency. Don't you just love that? Like, this is my commentary. Don't you just love that when you know that your man has just worked all day and he's so tired, but he still has something to give to you? You know, like he still has that energy. He just wants to make sure you're okay. Uh, oh gosh, listen to me. My heart's kind of opening, isn't it? Are yours opening, ladies? This is what this for. Open those hearts just a little bit. Uh, okay, back to the story. There was tension around his eyes, but he relaxed when he saw me. Offering him the chair next to mine, I resisted the impulse to smooth the wrinkles from his jacket. Any excuse to touch him. All settled in? He asked at the same time I asked how his meeting went. Our questions collided, canceling each other's voice out. I chuckled and answered first. Yes, all settled. Vivian's playing hostess. Can you stay for a glass of wine? Maybe some dinner? She has a new tarot deck. If you're lucky, she might read your fortune. Is she any good? He removed his jacket and undid the bottom at his collar. My gaze dropped to the patch of exposed skin, then slowly climbed back up to find him watching me. Awareness flared in his eyes. No, she's terrible at it. Well, that's too bad. What about you? Are you asking if I can read your fortune? His mouth curved in amusement. I don't know. You look like you'd be good at that sort of thing. I scooted closer. I'm good at a lot of things, detective. Hold out your hand. He turned his palm up, and I set it in my lap. His skin was rough against mine, where I traced the lines of his palm with my fingernail, reveling in the way his breath caught at my touch. With my thumb, I rubbed small circles into the base of his fingers, watching his eyes grew heavy-lidded with pleasure. I think she meant watching his eyes grow heavy-lidded with pleasure. I bent over his hand. What would you like to know? How long will I live? Pretending to examine his lifeline, I bit my cheek to keep from smiling. It seems you'll live long enough to admit how valuable I am to your investigation. So, I'll be old and gray. I pinched his thumb. What else do you want to know? What's that line tell you? He pointed to the line running at the top of his palm. Ah, that's your love line. I tissed. It's the shortest one I've ever seen. It means You're disagreeable and impatient. I don't know. I hedged. This doesn't look promising. Tessa, he growled, you're making that up. Twisting my hand, he captured it in his own to drag me closer. I couldn't keep the smile off my face. It was nice to see him this way. Even nicer to know I'd played a part in wiping the haunted expression from his eyes. Don't be mad, detective. I read it like I see it. He grinned, seeing through my lie, and I felt my heart stutter as his thumb circled my wrist. Oh, yeah, that's a kind gesture, sending little frissions of heat up my arm. Have you guys ever had that? That is a kind gesture. I'm speaking to you, you ladies. I'm just remembering, yeah, that is a kind gesture. Okay, back to the story. I already told you I don't get mad. I get even. A girl can hope. Read it again, for real this time. All right, hold still. I ran my finger along his heart line. There was a gap near the start, and my touch lingered there. I knew what it meant, and my voice dropped with sympathy. This break means you suffered a loss of a loved one. Yeah, it was quite significant. You're not over it. His silence confirmed my fears. A pang of jealousy throbbed around my heart. It was probably a first love, and knowing him, there was an elaborate shrine to the woman somewhere in his house. It would explain a lot. He'd said there wasn't anyone else, and it was because she was dead. It was hard to he'd said there wasn't anyone else, and it was because she was dead. It was hard to compete with the ghosts. Not that I was competing. A witch never played second fiddle. Is that all? It ends there? Misery laced his tone, almost as if he'd been hoping for a different answer. I sighed, peevish, and continued the reading. No, see this here? My finger trailed the length of his palm. After the break, the line is long and deep. That's a good sign. It means you'll find your true match. And see this small curve on the end? He nodded, dark eyes watching me and not the curve of my palm. It signifies a willingness to sacrifice everything for love. That's pretty noble of you, detective. I suppose you wouldn't do the same? My laugh came out harsh. Sacrifice everything for love? That sounds like a fairy tale. And my life is no fairy tale. Prince Charming doesn't end up with the witch, detective. Maybe he should. His fingers intertwined with mine, and he brought my hand back to his lips. Tessa, there's something. Here we are. Vivian's voice startled me as she entered the room. I jerked my hand out of Derek's, feeling silly for getting caught. Or maybe it was just fear. Whatever he was about to say had felt important, altering, but I wasn't meant to hear it. If this fortune told me anything, it was that he was destined for great things, not a lousy witch who could barely support herself. Wow, that rings so true. Vivian paused when she saw Derek, her eyes narrowing at our odd expressions. I'm going to need another glass. Plunking the tray down on the table, she headed back to the kitchen, only making it a few feet before she froze, her hands lifted, fingers trembling in the air. What is it, Viv? A sense of foreboding curled my stomach. We're not alone. I glanced at the clock perched on the nearby shelf. It wasn't midnight. It couldn't be Ella. Vivian confirmed my thoughts. It's not Ella. It's someone else. Slowly she angled her head towards Derek. He shifted in his chair. What's happening? Vivian's eyes became glassy, and her skin drained of color. Detective Chambers? There's someone here who wishes to speak with you. Her name is Sophia. Ooh. Ooh. I had a feeling somebody like that was going to show up. I had a feeling. All right, ladies, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this out so others can hear my little craziness reading. I love doing this with you, and I will see you in a couple of days. Bye.